The show where anything goes. Motivation, mindset, recovery, philosophy, and life. We become who we are through what we experience. We all have a story, and this is My Backstory with Josh Boyer.
All right, everybody, what's up, man? We're here at the Arcadia Police Department recording episode number 16 of the My Backstory podcast with Jason Davis. So I came up here, actually, Jason reached out to me and I had done a class here with Johnny Primo. And so he's like, hey, man, come on down. We'll do some shooting and this and that. So I brought my son out here, and such an awesome experience, because there's a lot that I don't know about shooting, so listening to him like coach up my son and getting him all squared away, getting myself squared away, just really cool experience. So I was like, hey, take the opportunity. Want to do a podcast. So I'm here with Jason, and I'm going to let him share his backstory with you guys. So Jason, go ahead and take it away, man.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? First and foremost, I appreciate you and your son coming out. I always like getting people out here on the range, especially youth. I started shooting when I was very young. As a matter of fact, I passed my hunter safety course when I was 6 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I couldn't even read the questions at the time, but it was 100 true false questions. My father read everything to me, and I answered true false, true false, true false, and
aced it.
At the end of it, I missed a total of 6 questions that were all on conservation. I couldn't tell you what conservation was when I was 6 years old, but I knew.
Still couldn't.
Yeah, good. Especially here in the state of California, I think you're right. So yeah, really great having you guys out here. It was great meeting you at Johnny's class. He always puts on a great class. He's a good host and definitely a very knowledgeable guy. And I'm lucky enough to call him a friend. But again, I'm stoked to have you and your son out here, and hope to get you guys out more often.
Yeah, for sure, man. So what's your story? Where'd you grow up? Kind of. What got you into law enforcement? What got you into being into SWAT and all that other stuff? What was the progression there?
So not really a unique story, but a bit different. Here we are at Arcadia PD. I literally was born across the street at Arcadia Methodist.
Right.
I grew up probably about 1,000 yards away from where we are right now.
Oh, okay.
On one of what we call the alphabet streets. I went all through Arcadia schools. When I graduated, I spent some time with my father, who owned Davis Leather Company. They manufactured law enforcement equipment. Anything you see that's made of leather that cops used to wear outside of boots. He made it: holsters, belts, mag pouches, radio carriers, pretty much anything and everything that I still wear today that's all leather. Either I made or he made. I went to work for him and was
local, by the way?
He started out here in Arcadia. Well, actually, he started out out of state and then moved to Arcadia.
Okay.
Had a business here in Arcadia, then moved it out to Walnut, California.
Okay.
So I was helping him and going to college at the time. Transferred out to Cal Poly, and his shop was just right down the road from Cal Poly. So I'd either be going to school full time, working with him back and forth. Again, I'd grown up shooting. I've got photos of me when I was like 3 or 4 years old with a Red Ryder BB gun, which every kid had. The 4 basic firearm safety rules were literally instilled in me as soon as I could walk and use my fingers as a gun. I could not point my fingers at somebody. If I wanted to shoot, I had to point my finger and point it in a safe direction. And my parents were very dogmatic about making sure that I knew those 4 basic firearm safety rules. So I just recently found a handful of photos, probably taken at one of the Christmas times, when I got this Red Ryder BB gun, and sure enough, my finger's right alongside the trigger. Not in the trigger, not anything. So that was instilled in me early. So I grew up shooting way back when. I'll be 47 next month. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s shooting. And that was really the time when IPSC was really taking off. A lot of the names that were big back then, they've either come and gone or their families are still involved in it. But I grew up shooting pretty much every weekend and was really interested in it. Started to do a lot more. Then I get into shotgun shooting, and then I started doing a little more hunting. And by the time I got into my 20s, I kind of figured out that I probably wanted to go into law enforcement. I had a really good friend who was more of a father figure, likely, than my own father. He was a special agent with the Secret Service, and I always was in awe of what he did. Just the stories he had, it was really interesting. And that's what I kind of set my sights on. And I think when I was about 12 or 13, he gave me 2 bits of advice. He said, go to college and stay away from drugs. So I grew up here in Arcadia. Everybody else around me was doing drugs. All I did was drink beer. I say all I did was drink beer. Never got into drugs or anything, but I drank my share of beer.
Right.
And then once I started college, I started realizing I got to make something of myself. Neither of my parents went to college. My dad had 4 brothers. Out of actually 3 brothers, there were 4 of them. None of them went to college. None of their kids went to college. Yeah. And that was something that I looked at and said, if I want to do something different, I probably need to continue with education and go from there. So as graduation started coming and I started to see it just little by little, hey, I'm 5 quarters away, 4 quarters away, 3 quarters away. I started testing with the Secret Service, passed my written, passed my initial interview, went to my second interview, which was a panel interview, and my 20-something-year-old self ended up getting into an argument with one of the guys. So of one of the 3, needless to say, I pretty much tanked right there.
Right.
And I wasn't sure what I'd do. At about that same time, I had a very good friend here who had been friends with my father, subsequently friends with me, Dean Caputo, and he worked here at Arcadia PD. He had also been assigned to a DEA task force for years, and he pulled me aside one day and said, I've worked for the feds. It's not everything you think. We're hiring. Why don't you go ahead and put in an application? And I thought, with Arcadia PD, I grew up here, went to school here, came back as a teacher here. I'm not sure I want to do this. And at the time, I just
What were you teaching, by the way? I'm sorry if I interrupted, but what were you teaching?
No, so I taught math one year and then English and history the next.
At the high school or what?
I was in Alhambra at one of their middle schools, and then here at First Avenue, where I actually went to then junior high, now middle school.
Oh, wow.
So I came back, went through junior high there, came back and taught. And yes, there still were a couple of teachers that were teaching when I went to school there.
That's so crazy.
And I wasn't the greatest student. I was a hellion. I barely graduated high school. I still carry around my transcripts with me because nobody believes that I could finish school, become a teacher, and they wonder how I could have done so poorly when I tell them. So I've literally found my old transcripts and I carry them around with me and say, here you go. I graduated at the bottom of the barrel. I just got lucky.
Yeah, for sure.
So going back on the very good friend of mine, who's more of a father figure, he gave me those 2 bits of advice. Go to college and stay away from drugs. No problem. I was able to do both. Fast forward, I ended up testing here with Arcadia PD. I think I started testing in either May or June of 1999. And I think in November or December of 1999, I was told, hey, the first week of January, you got a slot in the academy.
Wow.
So I ended up going to Rio Hondo Police Academy, which was locally here. It was about a 10, 15-minute drive each morning. Yeah. Our academy at the time was 20 weeks long. I had a fun time in the academy. A lot of people will think it's hell, it's this, it's that. I don't think it's any worse than, and I wasn't in the military, but in talking to a lot of my friends who were in the military, I don't think there was anything any worse. Matter of fact, I think it was probably a lot easier, especially back when I went through. It was a time for me to just soak up everything. Yeah. I had Arcadia patches on, and my job from morning to night for the next 20 weeks was to learn as much as I could in what was the basic academy. And that's all it is. They're giving you a basic idea of what law enforcement is, a basic knowledge of what you should know and understand by the end of 20 weeks. And then you go to your respective agency and really learn what it's like to be out in the field.
So are most guys already hired before they even get into the academy?
When I went through, I want to say we started with either 68 or 69 people when we graduated mid-40, either 42, 44. And about 2/3 were already picked up, and about 1/3 was what we call pre-service. So they were also called slick sleeves because they only had the Rio Hondo patch on one shoulder.
Right.
And out of that 1/3, I'd say probably 10 or 12 of them ended up getting hired by other agencies. I haven't kept in touch with a lot of people that I went through the academy with. Every now and then I'll hear of somebody who, oh yeah, I remember that person, they didn't get picked up. Oh, they got picked up here and there.
What happens if you don't get picked up? If You go through the academy because you like if I wanted to go to the academy, right, and I fit the criteria, whatever, I wanted to go to the academy, I can just go right as a civilian.
Yeah, you can go. I think there's a minimum background check you've got to pass.
Right.
You end up going through, and there are some people that just will never get hired. And I remember the president of the academy at the time said, some of you are great candidates, but you may not get hired. Some of you who are hired, who are great candidates, you'll probably lose your job. And ultimately, that's just reality.
Right.
There are no second place trophies.
Yeah,
this is what we're doing for a living.
Yeah.
You either make it or you don't.
Yep.
There no places to go cry. There's no special room for you. That's just it. It's reality. You either figure it out or you don't.
Yeah.
And it's not for everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
It's like say the likelihood of me ever having gone to medical school was about 0. So I look at that. I was never meant for medical school. This perhaps I was meant for. So here I am now, my 19th year of doing this job.
Were you bummed to leave teaching, or were you kind of stoked to get into law enforcement?
I was. I enjoyed my time teaching. I made some great contacts that I ended up working throughout the schools a few years after I was a police officer. Yeah. So I already had those contacts. They knew me, I knew them, and that really helped out. I'm still friends to this day with a handful of the people that I worked with as a teacher. Partially because I work in the community here, and it's great living in the community.
Yeah.
So that part of it, I enjoy. Friends for life kind of thing. But
yeah, for sure.
As far as missing teaching, in a way, I've continued teaching. Shortly after I got off probation, I was appointed to our force training unit with emphasis on firearms. Right. So I went through the firearms training classes, and I've been teaching here at our police department since about 2002 when I went through and got all my certifications. So running our either 1911 course or our M16 course. The 1911 course is a 2-day course. The M16 is a 3-day course. So I've had my hand in teaching here at a different level, kind of the adult learning type stuff.
I saw the way you taught my son, and it was like, I can tell. I'm not shocked for you to tell me you used to be a teacher. That's awesome.
It's something I enjoy doing. I see, unfortunately, fewer and fewer families shooting, and that's one of the things that if there was anything that I could give back to a community, that would be it. I'd love to see the family go out and start shooting again. Yeah. 22 is still the most popular round in the United States, if not the world. Yeah. And you can go out and you can shoot for all day for $20-$30, and everybody can have a good time. Everybody can have fun. But what it does, for me, is it keeps that family together. It's one of those things that everybody can do this. Not like you go to the soccer game or the football game and everybody's watching one person. Everybody can go out and shoot. Yeah. And that's how I grew up, and I'd love to see that. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but that sport, and I'll call it a sport, has been dwindling for decades.
Oh, for sure.
And it's just something, when you said, hey, can I bring my son out? Absolutely. Yeah. If we can get him shooting, if we can keep him interested, that's one more generation that we have to keep this spark going.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's, something I enjoy doing.
Yeah, it's super awesome, man. And to see the joy that he has in coming out here, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a traitor because he went to the 1911 and liked it better than the Glock. But
well, no plastic gun ever killed a Nazi, so that's what I always say.
You win.
No, it was great to see him shooting both guns out there, and we got him a chance to shoot the M16, which I think he liked quite a bit. Yeah. He's got a pretty good target to show everybody.
Oh, for sure. He's proud of that.
He's going to see. Good.
Yeah. So how did your transition go once you got onto Arcadia? So you got into the teaching and you were on the range, and then what was your progression through the ranks, if you will?
So I was a police officer from 2000 when I got hired, and I got promoted to sergeant in 2009. But as a police officer, I started working with our force training unit. I did some work on the WMD side when Homeland Security got spun up. I went back to Anniston, did a couple train the trainer courses, came back, taught here, not only at our agency, but within the San Gabriel Valley with some fire department personnel, public works personnel, and then persons from the law enforcement side. So we taught quite a bit throughout the county. While I was doing that, the position came up with the school district where they wanted to go ahead and fund a police officer to be on the campus. We had just brought a police officer into the high school, and they wanted someone in the middle school. I just got done teaching middle school, and here I am with this opportunity. I had just got out probation. Excuse me. I didn't even have 3 years on. So I was working patrol for a couple of years, put in for this position, ended up getting and becoming the first middle school, what they called at the time, school resource officer. Yeah. So I was in charge of, here in Arcadia, we've got 3 middle schools. I worked a day on each campus, and then my 4th day, because I worked a 4-day work week, I'd float around to the different campuses, or if something major came up, I could obviously go from one campus to another. But I was in charge of most of the juvenile investigations that took place at all of the middle schools. I was there not really as an enforcement officer, but more as I'm a resource. Right. One of the things that's kind of a pet peeve of mine, whenever I'm out in the public and I'm in uniform and I see a parents with their young child and they say, hey, if you start acting this way, that man's going to arrest you. Right. Well, thanks a lot, Mom and Dad, because what you've just done is you've turned that kid off to me. Right. Anybody wearing a blue uniform or a green and tan uniform, that child may not have liked how their parents said I was going to go arrest them. I'm not. Right. Let me know how I can help your kid. If your kid's being a little turd or something, I'll talk to him. I don't mind that. But don't immediately turn your son or daughter off to someone that they can call if they need help. That's a good point. And so I was there on the campus for that resource. Yeah. And it still is, the juvenile justice system was really set into place, and we can talk laws and everything ad nauseum and what works and what doesn't. The juvenile justice system was set in place to bring the juvenile or the child back with their family as quickly and efficiently as possible. Yeah. And if I could do that in a way where I didn't have to arrest a kid, I'd do it. That to me was bigger than bringing a kid in, putting them in a jail cell, booking them, doing all that stuff. I looked at it as, how can I help the family? Because that's who needs the help. Absolutely. That was something big in me that I never got into any tussles with law enforcement when I was growing up, but I had quite a few friends that did, and had somebody have been there to deal with the child, but more so deal with the parents and how they can deal with their child. Yeah. That to me was a bigger part of being a police officer. And that's what I was fortunately able to do while I was on the middle school campuses. So I did that for a couple of years. And we had our high school police officer leave, and I was set to come back to patrol. I had my eyes set on becoming a field training officer because I now had 5 or 6 years on. A spot came up at the at the high school, and I was asked if that was something I wanted to do, and it was a good opportunity. So instead of going from 3 campuses with about 700 kids on each campus, I went to the high school that had, if everybody was there to include teachers and staff, I had about 4,000 people. Its own little city. I didn't realize that's Arcadia High School. I didn't realize that had many people, because I know Temple City, I think I graduated in 2000. We had, I think, 407 people in our graduating class, about 1,600 kids. The graduating class now at Arcadia High takes over the Santa Anita racetrack. That's how many people, and it's 2 to 3 full hours of so-and-so graduated, so-and-so graduated. It just goes and goes and goes. So literally, if everybody were on campus who needed to be on campus, you got about 4,000 people there. What are your thoughts, if you don't mind me asking, what are your thoughts on, you see all the school shootings, and it's a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about, or they want to keep it off the table because it gets pretty heated sometimes because people have differing views. But being that you were working on a high school campus, do you feel like you being there was deterring any kind of, mentally deranged kids or other kids having issues that are come on campus and shoot up the school or whatever? I'd like to think that any police officer on campus is going to help thwart that. We can take the most recent Parkland, and we could debate that back and forth. But that was a pretty, I'll call it scathing, because it called out a lot of the police officers that arrived first. They've got second by second radio traffic, and how nobody decided to go in. Yeah. What they heard, they thought were firecrackers. They were waiting for this, waiting for that. They'd take up a position here and there. Right. Back when I first started, we always talked about, hey, if we have an active shooter, we grab 3 people and go.
Yep.
At the time, and I can't remember his name, I could get it for you so you could put it up later. Actually might be Last of Borscht out of Middle America. He had suggested the one officer go in. If they hear gunfire, that officer has to go in. He got lambasted. I mean, he was chastised left and right. You don't do this, you don't do that. Now we're back to that. If you hear gunfire, active shooter, you go. Huh. So I would like to think that having one officer on campus does help deter. You got a cop car sitting out front. You don't know where the officer is. You make your presence known. That's our first line of defense, is just the presence.
Yeah.
I also had a pretty open door policy with everybody. You got something to say, bring it up. I'm not going to hold you. If you got something good to say or bad to say, let's hear it. I'm not one of these strict disciplinarians that is going to go off on you for bringing something to my attention that was stupid or idiotic. That open door policy that I had, I'd like to think helped out not only in I don't think we ever had any instances that could have led into an active shooter or a school type shooter situation. We just didn't see that, and we haven't seen it here in the 19 years I've been here. But I do think having officers on campus as much as possible is a physical deterrent.
Yeah. You think that's the best answer? I mean, to stop it? I mean, because I know there's like people are talking about arming teachers. They're talking about having an officer, on campus. Like, what do you think the best answer is to stop some of these school shootings? I
think constantly having somebody there who's armed, who will go towards the sound of gunfire, is probably the best thing we can do. Yeah. The Secret Service, they keep all the studies on school shooters or active killers, and every minute that a person doesn't get stopped, others are getting killed. So the best way to meet somebody who's in an active killer situation is to literally confront them. Huh. We see that when active killers are confronted, they turn the gun on themselves, they give up, or they're shot.
Right.
And confronting somebody in a situation like that, if I can have somebody on campus, let's go ahead and do it.
Right. Totally. I agree. I mean, because you people that are watching the news, first off, the information you're getting is not always the right information.
Correct.
Right? But you're looking at it and from a dad's perspective, I got kids and, I have my son's in school and I have other 3 boys that are going to be in school soon. So you're trying to think like, what is the best answer? Hopefully I can educate my kids to do the right thing, and to not, there's a time to be a hero and there's a time to seek cover and get out, But I don't know what the best answer is. You know what I mean? Like I would like to think that I could have a teacher that's trained up. That
I think that would be great.
A weapon. You know,
I've talked about it with some of the school administrators on what it would cost to put somebody armed on campus. On I think we've got 13 campuses total.
Right.
By putting somebody just part-time, and when I say part-time, hire somebody that just works the school days.
Yeah.
So they've got the summer off, they've got winter breaks off, they've got spring break off. Hiring somebody from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m, maybe somebody who's retired, maybe somebody prior military, whatever that solution is, hire them, put them on campus, and all they do is you just kind of wait.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that spare tire.
Yeah.
I don't have to use it until I have to use it.
Yeah, for sure.
It actually, you'd think it would cost in the millions of dollars for a city like our size. It's actually a fraction of that. Right. And putting somebody like that on one campus or all your campuses, you're probably going to get some notoriety, either good or bad. But when you look at something like that, I don't see anything negative to that. If you've got somebody who's adequately trained, why wouldn't you? If you've got teachers who can do it, who are adequately trained, put them on there.
Yeah.
If the person who's going to commit that crime takes a second and goes, hold on, I don't know if there's somebody armed on this campus, I'm going to go to the other one.
Yep.
You've just stopped it.
Yep.
So, or at least at that one campus. Me personally, I'm all for it. I'm for people having their concealed carry permit. If you can pass the background, if you can go to the training, if you medically are okay, why not?
Yeah.
one more armed good guy I'm a fan of theirs.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's where my vision is on that type of stuff. But
such a crazy topic, because you like when I look back on when I was in high school, it's like I never would have even crossed my fucking mind, man. Like thinking about an active shooter like on my campus. I mean, we had, gangs and stuff that, not gangs per se, but like, there would be a fight or whatever. And then be, oh, my cousin's from this Asian gang or from this Mexican gang or whatever. They're going to come kick your ass. And that usually never ended up happening.
Exactly.
It's just a bunch of people talking shit. And, but I never felt unsafe, and I don't know if it was just the caliber of kids or the parenting was different or I don't know what changed, but it's just completely different than it used to be. And it wasn't that long ago. I mean, I've been out of high school for, coming on 20 years or almost 20 years. And it's like, it's already changed by in that amount of time. It's
quite
crazy.
a bit.
Yeah. It's nuts.
I don't know what changed. I don't know what the answer is. But again, when it comes time to arming people, why not?
Yeah, for sure.
Give it a try.
So what did you do from Arcadia High School, and then you got onto SWAT? At which point did you get onto SWAT?
I tested for and was appointed to the SWAT team at my 3-year mark.
Yeah.
We had spots for the entry team and spots for the sniper team. I'd always been long range shooting had always intrigued me, even though the shooting that we do in law enforcement with scoped weapons isn't the long range that a lot of people are used to.
Right.
I had shot long range on my own prior to becoming a police officer, and it goes back to math.
Yeah.
That's what intrigues me. Long range shooting to me is just all math. There's a mathematical equation behind it. Bullets that are made to a certain degree of certainty will come out of the barrel at a certain speed. Gravity takes control from there. And as long as that gravitational pull, that bullet's going to do X coming out the barrel, then all you got to do is figure out what your wind is. Yeah. And again, it's a big mathematical equation. That's what intrigued me. So I put in for the sniper side, got that, and I've been doing that since 2003.
Nice.
So this is 16 years of doing that, shooting long range. We don't have a large enough agency to have a full-time team.
Right.
So we have a part-time team. I think we've got 14 or 16 guys on the entry team, 2 snipers, and then we've got what we call an inter-containment team. And that's made up of individuals who basically take up perimeter positions when we go ahead and come on scene. So we don't have to pull guys from the entry team to take perimeter positions. Right. So ultimately, we've got probably 20 to 24 people that will actually go out on an operation if we're all here.
Yeah.
And that's a good number that works out with us. It pulls from a lot of people. You have some long days, but that works well for us. Yeah. And it's shooting to me is fun. I'm sure. We could probably ask your son that too, and he would probably say he had a good time today.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I still am stoked every day I get to come and train and shoot. It's something that I enjoy doing. Shooting to me it's relaxing, and a lot of people don't know that, especially people who shoot for the first time. They'll actually say, "Hey, there's something kind of zen about this. It's you and the gun and your target, and it's all up to you."
Yeah.
So, and that's what I end up doing. So I've been doing the sniper thing since 2003. And I'll do it as long as they'll let me, or as long as my body will let me.
Yeah, for
One
sure.
or the other.
Do they have like a separate like training like budget for you guys so you guys can go and train, or is the training all contained within Arcadia Police Department, or do you guys get to go outside of Arcadia Police Department?
We're able to get to go out. We do have a budget, and that budget buys anything that we need. That budget buys ammo, weapons if we need it, if we need to upgrade on certain things, we do. But as far as going out and training, if we find a training class that we want to go to, we'll go ahead and write it up and show the benefits of it. And 9 times out of 10, we'll be able to go ahead and go into that training. Because I've kind of been in this industry for a while. I write, with having my father in this, I've been introduced to a lot of people. We've made quite a few different connections here. So we'll go cross train with people. I mean, we'll run up to Santa Barbara and go shoot with those guys
Right.
We'll run down to San Diego and go shoot with those guys. We'll go up with LA County sheriffs when they're doing some of their helicopter shooting, and we'll shoot with those guys. That's really cool. So that's fun. We're able to do that. We learn some tricks of the trade. We give some of our tricks. Ultimately, it's just good to have that camaraderie that's out there to see what someone else is doing that you learn from or you learn not to do. It's great. You always learn something. Your mind's always this sponge that's taking in something. Yeah. Again, even if it's something you learn that's bad, hey, I'm going to learn not to do that. You're still learning something when you're out there. So anytime we can get out, do training where we aren't the instructor ourselves, it helps out.
Absolutely. I agree. And then, so how did you get into, I mean, you said that your dad was into shooting, but we didn't really get into that. How did you, was your dad prior service? Was he a veteran, or was he just really into shooting and just liked it?
No, he actually took up leather goods in middle school. Okay. He had a leather carving class in middle school, and he just went from there. He was one of those guys, not good at business, but if you told him, hey, I need you to build this for me, and here's what I think it looks like, and here's what it needs to do, he'd say, all right, come back in an hour, and he'd have exactly what you wanted. So he'd grown up in Oregon and shooting and hunting, so that's what put food on the table. Yeah. And he just transitioned into, I can make this, I can make that. He actually ended up being the pattern maker for two guys that are pretty famous when they were both here in Monrovia, John Bianchi of Bianchi International and Neil Perkins of Safariland.
Okay.
So those guys went on and had awesome, massive, huge businesses. And like I said, my dad wasn't the business guy, but he knew how to build stuff.
Is he still in business now or no?
No, he died a few years ago.
Oh, sorry about
that. But he was one of those guys that could just, if you brought him a brand new gun, within an hour, he had the holster you needed. Yeah. And he just took that and he built it into a successful business. And then as he got on in age, he took everything back a bit and ended up getting to the point where it was just him in the shop. He liked doing that. He transitioned, not fully out of law enforcement stuff, but he really started getting into the cowboy action shooting, and he was actually one of the founding members of the Single Action Shooting Society, and started building saddles and all kinds of stuff. I built a saddle my last summer before I graduated. I built a saddle. It's still sitting in my garage.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I had watched him make them and make them and make them, and I finally said, hey, Dad, I want to build a saddle. So he threw me a saddle tree and said, all right, cover it with leather. Wow. And that was all the guidance I got.
Yeah, it's one thing that I always wish that I had, because I grew up without my dad without him around a large part of my life, and I always wish that I had somebody to teach me a skill like that, where it's whether it be leather working or gunsmithing or electrical work or whatever. It's man, that'd be kind of cool to learn some of that shit because you pick it up from your dad or whatever. And so that's been my thing lately is with shooting is I'm not the best shooter. I wouldn't even say I'm good yet, but I'm practicing so I can get there. So it's a skill that I can impart on my son, be like, hey man, this is some things I'm going to teach you, and the things that I don't know as far as woodworking and electrical, that's what YouTube's for.
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm the same way with it. I've still got my old sewing machine, which was built in the 1800s, right? And it looks like it was built in the 1800s, but that's what still works. I've got all my old patterns, and I've got everything sitting in my garage. All I've got to do is put it all together and start doing this one day. And about every 6 months, I go, okay, I'm going to do it. I go buy a couple hides of leather. I get everything closed up and running, and then I see a squirrel and take off on some other tangent, and I'm gone. And it's just kind of I'm at about that 6 month period now. It's a new year, so within probably the next 4 to 6 weeks, I'll go, let me dig everything back out. Let me see what I can do, and something will happen, and I'll push it off another 6 monts.
Where do you see yourself going from here? Where do you see yourself going from? You're on the part of the SWAT team. You still work in Arcadia. And we talked earlier that you probably retire in 6-7 years.
Yeah, I'll be able to go at that point. And I taught for Colt Manufacturing for 10 years. I was one of their armor instructors. There were 6 of us that traveled around the U.S. and the world. I got a couple overseas trips out of it. So I do enjoy teaching. Yeah. I've also started writing quite a bit. That's awesome. So I write anywhere between 8 to 12 to maybe 15 articles a year. on just stuff that I either like, stuff that works, or stuff that can help somebody out with. I'm not one of these guys that will take on 10 different things a month. I've got a good paycheck. That's one of those things that I enjoy writing, and it's something I can do over the period of a couple hours on a weekend or a day off, that where I've got a chunk of time, I can just sit and devote a handful of hours to coming up with an article and then working on the photos with the editors. And that's something that's enjoyable to me. So I'd like to continue doing that. If I promote here at the PD, that'd be great. If not, I'm having a great time being a sergeant. It's a fun job, but as we were talking earlier, patrol isn't an old man's game. It really is a young person's game. Even in cities that aren't quote unquote busy, like an LAPD or a sheriff's department, you still run the risk of having something bad happen to you. And our bodies are all different. They give out here and there. I want to make it to a healthy retirement so I can actually collect on PERS for more than a year before I croak. But as far as living in this state, I mean, not to get too political, but I definitely am not on the side of the majority of our state Congress right now.
Me both.
And it's just one of those things where in order to live how I want to, I probably can't do it in this state. I think it's great. I mean, yesterday I drove down to Manhattan Beach for a meeting, and sure enough, there's a Pacific Ocean that we're sitting, eating lunch at, looking at the ocean. And as I'm driving back east, I'm looking up at Big Bear and Arrowhead and Mount Baldy and seeing snow.
Yep.
It's great. I love hunting in this state. I love the wine that's grown in this state. I love a lot about it, but a lot of the laws that are here, I'd likely be a criminal the day I retired, and I don't want to do that. I want to.
So what's the ideal for you? What would it be? Or where would it be?
Texas is interesting. I do like Oregon. I've visited a handful of times up there. I used to spend my summers up there with family. I do like it. Sure, is it becoming somewhat like California? Yes. I don't know if it'll be there as quickly as California is now.
Right.
But that I do like Oregon quite a bit. I like some of their laws up there. Portland's got a great food scene.
Yeah,
that's a big thing with me. I mean, outside of this, I'm a huge. When I go home to relax, the kitchen is the place I relax.
Yeah,
I'll sit and I always joke that I cook for four, but the majority of the time it's just me. My other half, we split the state, and when she's here, I cook for the same four people when it's just us. And when I'm here alone, I cook for the same four people and it's just me. I love going to the store and buying way too much and then
I think it must be a guy thing, man. Because I love cooking as well. I don't mind it at all, So my wife, I mean, not that she's a bad cook, it's just not her thing. So I enjoy it. I like putting stuff together and be like, oh, let me try that out. Like last night we did Rambo trout and some broccolinis and whatever.
It's great.
I was like, give it a shot. But I'll go in there and I'll go to the store to buy the stuff for it. And I always buy way more than I need, always. Because I think it's coming from a place of lack when I was growing up or whatever. So it's always
that's where I'm at as well.
So it's hey man, I'm just gonna make sure that I have enough for everyone.
Yeah.
And we're good to go. Bellies are full and we can go to bed happy. It's all good.
Yeah, I've recently taken up a lot of smoking meats on a Traeger.
I saw your post about that with Traeger.
Yeah,
how do you like that?
I absolutely love it. I've got Spencer Pratt to thank for getting me into Traeger. And I cook a lot for the people on my team.
That's really
when
cool.
I won't cook one rack of ribs, I'll cook 6. I won't cook a tri-tip, I'll grab a 17-pound brisket. And that's it. And I just won't bring in that. I'll bring in some sides. And next thing you know, everybody else is bringing in something. So last go around when I worked graveyard, just about every Sunday I'd have something to bring in.
Yeah.
Whether it be, pork belly or pork shoulder or a brisket or racks of ribs or big massive beef short ribs. Yeah. My thing is just to get me in the kitchen. That's
for sure.
That's where I relax, and I'm big into wine. Most of my good buddies are winemakers up in the Paso Robles area. Yeah. So I'm up there often, hunting a lot up there, and then making wine during the day.
That's what I was going to ask you. How being from California, because you were raised here as well, that was always a question that I had for myself. I was like, damn, how am I going to get out and hunt around here? You know what I mean? Like I have a Suburban, so it's like I have the room to like, whatever I kill, I can bring it back or whatever. Have to obviously line it so it doesn't get all jacked up inside my truck. But how do you get around to like where it's functional? Like my buddies who live in Idaho and Eastern Washington, like they go hunt and they just go home and they have their stuff with them. It's totally easy.
Yeah.
Seems like here you got to travel to do anything.
You do have to travel a fair bit. It's, Paso Robles is 200 miles away from here, so it's a nice, easy 3-hour drive.
Right.
Most of the land up there is privately owned. Fortunately, I've got good friends that own a lot of land up there. And during grape harvest, the pigs just overrun the whole area up there. And they welcome you to come in and shoot them because they're ripping up the vineyard. They're eating the grapes. Same with the deer during deer season. If I could do it, and if I had a big enough freezer, I would literally just fill freezer after freezer after freezer of animals that I hunted.
Oh, yeah.
I shot a pretty decent sized pig a couple months ago and I'm still working on that, but I still have to go to the store and buy stuff.
Right.
But if I could physically do it, I'd take 2 deer a year, a couple pigs, and that would be what I'd live off of. And, cook for Trish and her kids. That's what we'd use. That's it. So, I'm fortunate that I get to go up there and I've got friends that allow me to hunt on their properties and things. It's also fun when we get a handful of guys and we go out hunting ourselves. But Central California, there's still a lot of places that hunt. There's still a lot of people that like hunting. There's still a lot of people that like guns. Once you get out of the big LA, Sacramento, and San Francisco, most of the people are normal.
Yeah.
But it's just, unfortunately, the voting public are in those 3 areas of the state, and they drive what those of us who aren't in those areas, it's true. Their votes dictate how we have to act and react.
Do you think you're going to end up getting another like security type job like when you retire, or do you think you'll just stick to writing for articles? And how do you even go about getting that connection to write for these for the newspapers or for the magazines that you're writing for? How's that connection being made?
So that connection was made. It was interesting. Cameron Hopkins, who is a good friend of mine, he was actually the editor of American Handgunner and probably a couple other magazines at the time. He went from American Handgunner to one of the vice presidents at Surefire. And during that time, he wanted to start Surefire. He wanted to start a magazine with Surefire, and he did, called Combat Tactics. At the time, he needed to do some photos on an enclosed range. Cameron knew that we had an enclosed range and asked if he could come up and do some photos with Ichiro Nagata, who's like the godfather of photographers in the firearms industry. And myself and a couple other officers and friends guinea pigged as, the quote unquote SWAT guys. And we took pictures for a couple days with Cameron and Ichi and a few of us. And that turned into Cameron calling and saying, hey, can you grab a couple guys? I've got to do 3 or 4 articles. I'll outfit you guys and everything, and we'll put Surefire lights on your guns, and we'll do this, we'll do that. And we do that a handful of times a year. And then finally one time Cameron says, if you're interested in writing, why don't you find something and write about it? Because that's, as a police officer, that's all we do. We do a lot of writing. We document things. We're, in a way, we're reporters, we're writers, but we don't have to come up with the story. The story's there. We just got to draw it out of somebody. Yep. So I was having a new gun built by GA Precision back in North Kansas City, Missouri. And through that, passed Cameron and said, hey, GA has been really good to me over the years. Their guns are solid. How about I do an article on this? And he said, cool, have it done by this date. And we'll do photos on this date. Sure enough, the gun came, put it all together, shot it, tested it, wrote an article, and that was in 2009. So for almost 10 years, I've been writing articles, and just by meeting different people, or they see you, you see them, and hey, I'd like to write about this. I'd like to write about your product. Here's who I am. And next thing you know, you got other people either coming to you or your name gets known out in the industry. Yeah. So I've done quite a bit of writing, and it's just one of those things that I enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. How did you come up with the Southern Cross?
So when I first started working for Colt, I was a 1099 employee, and so they'd just pay me whatever my wage or my daily rate was. I'd get that, and in theory, I had to pay the taxes on it at the end of the year. Taxman is always going to get their cut. Not wanting to give them everything I had to, I started an LLC. And I didn't want to do something, Jason Tactical, Davis Tactical. I didn't want to put tactical on it. I didn't want to really have anything to do with the gun industry in a name.
Yeah.
So I'd been to Africa a handful of times and hunting down in Namibia. And I always used to go outside at night after dinner and just sit and watch the sky. There was no light pollution from anywhere because the closest town was 40 miles away.
Wow.
So the only light was what we had in camp. That's it.
Huh.
And I'd look up at the constellations and see things differently because I'm in the southern hemisphere.
Huh.
And I picked up the Southern Cross pretty quickly. So when I had to come up with a name a couple of years later, I thought, this is kind of interesting. I dug watching the stars and different constellations, everything down there. Southern Cross is pretty innocuous. So if ever I had to have shirts or hats made up that said Southern Cross Consulting, it could just be a handful of stars and people would think it's nothing.
Huh.
So I just came up with Southern Cross Consulting LLC, and that was it.
That's really cool.
And then a handful of years later, ATF came down with a ruling that said you actually had to be an employee of a firearms company if you traveled around with guns. So when I would teach for them, I'd have 40 M16s.
Right.
So I had to become an employee. So I then started paying my fair share of taxes and dissolved Southern Cross. But that's my Instagram handle, Southern Cross LLC.
And you have a pretty good following too. Like how did that following get? How did you like boost your following, or how did you like start to like build it up? Because a lot of people, I mean, there's stupid people you can like pay or companies you can pay to like have all these fake people from Thailand and Africa.
Yeah, and that's something. I'm too cheap to pay anybody to follow me. I think a lot of it had to do with some of the weapons that I was writing about.
Yeah.
And I was able to get my hands on quite a few really cool or interesting weapons that people maybe wouldn't see, or I'd throw a sneak peek out about something and it would get picked up. I started tagging and hashtagging a little differently. Well, I'd find some keywords in the I think you can do up to 30 hashtags.
Yeah.
I'd find some keywords, and then I started tagging some of the larger pages that, hey, I know they haven't seen a gun like this, so let me tag them and they'd go ahead and repost, and then I'd see a bunch of people come and start following me, and then so on and so forth. And over the period of a couple of years, it's grown. I mean, I think I have 16 or 17,000 followers, but it's all been organic. I said, there's no way I'm going to pay anybody to follow me. I don't need to do any fake advertising. I don't do any of this. It's just, here you go. And recently I started figuring out what stories were. I mean, I'm a dork when it comes to computers.
Yeah.
I'm lucky to turn my computer on when I need it at home. And, I wouldn't know the first thing really about how to get people to come to me if I didn't have some cool photos. I wouldn't be like, all right, hey, help me out here. I've never begged for anything.
Right.
But yeah, I started doing stories recently, and that I'll get a lot of interesting comments from stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. I'm an open book when it comes to stuff. People ask me my opinion. I'll give it to them. Hey, this is good. This is bad. If people say, hey, this sucks. All right, tell me why. Or does it suck because you read it sucks, or do you have some knowledge about it? Which one is it? Yeah. So Instagram's kind of cool. You get to see some interesting stuff in there, both good and bad. But
yeah, I think it's a great way to build your brand, if you will. It's a great way to like network with other people. I mean, a lot of people that I've met, like I told you earlier, like most of the people that I podcasted with, I didn't know before. You know what I mean? And I just met you this last time when we did that class with Primo.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm meeting so many people that I otherwise probably never would have met, because you have the ability to like connect with, just reach out to people that you normally wouldn't have that ability to reach out to. So for me, it's been great. Like my following isn't amazing yet, but it's just a work in progress, and I will not pay for anything. I'm not gonna have any followers on it that are from who knows where that don't have any posts or anything like that. I'm just not gonna do it.
Yeah.
So I want to keep it as original as possible and use it as a great platform to put out whatever I'm putting out.
And if all of a sudden I dropped to 10 followers tomorrow, I'd still put out the same content because I think it's cool, and maybe it can help somebody, maybe not, but
totally
stuff that I put out that I think's cool.
How much do you think mindset plays into your job and what you do?
It's a massive amount. I can so with firearms, it's marksmanship, gun handling, mindset. I can teach you marksmanship. I can teach you how to carry a gun. I can teach you how to point it. I can do this. I can't teach you mindset. You either have it or you don't. It's really not one of those things that, okay, I don't have the mindset today. I'm going to learn it tonight and I'll have it tomorrow. It's life. The mindset really comes with lifestyle and what you do and how you live your life. No, I'm not one of those guys that, is never going to have anything in my left hand. I'm left-handed. I'm always going to carry something in my left hand, but in the academy, don't carry anything in your gun hand. All right, I get it. I'm not the guy that goes and sits at the back of the restaurant with my back towards the door.
Right.
I'll be aware, and if I don't feel comfortable in the situation, I'll get out of it. But mindset's one of those things where you're constantly scanning, you're constantly looking to the point where it's not annoying everybody else around you. You got to live your life. But having the mindset of, I can take care of myself, I can take care of my family, I can look for things, I can look at things differently. The OODA loop is a big thing that I work off of: observe, orient, decide, and act, which was thought up by Air Force pilot Colonel William Boyd back, I think, in the Korean War. Okay. Talks about getting out in front of your enemy and staying a couple steps ahead to make them do what you want, and then they fail at doing something. That's when you act. Right. So, I'm always scanning, looking around, but as far as doing this and you're being a police officer, it's one of those things that you've got to be playing things out a couple steps ahead. And that mindset is going to keep you alive. Yeah. So,
would you say most of the guys you work with are pretty hard chargers, or would you say that some of them are just?
What I think we've got people who their mindset. Everyone's there. Everyone's got what it takes. You've got some people that are super high IQ that deal with people one way, and you've got people who are able to deal with a certain group of people another way. You've got to be, we get complaints often, so you've got to know when you can say things to people in a certain situation, when you can't. Right. Like, I'm not going to walk into the little old ladies club and tell a story about getting into something and using poor language to them. Yeah. But if I'm out on a car with a handful of gangsters or dirtbags, you're going to talk to them a bit differently. Yeah. And the team I work is primarily mostly the senior team, and they've got a lot of experience, and they're good at getting themselves into and out of situations that maybe some of the junior officers will see, and they'll be there one day, but they're still learning. They're that sponge that's not saturated. Yeah. It's wet, but if you squoze it, you wouldn't get a lot out of it, but it's there. What you would get is good content, and they're just soaking everything up. Yeah. I still like going out and handling calls with the guys, because you never know what you're going to get. Everybody, hey, no call is the same. Yeah. There might be things that are similar from other calls, and that's what you take your experience and you learn on. You rely on that past experience. So I love seeing what gets thrown at us. Right. How we act together, how we react together, how we do things. We had not even really a call the other day. We had to help a med jet helicopter land. Yeah. I told the guys, hey, here's ideally what I want. We talked about it for about 30 seconds inside, went over to the racetrack to set up, never had to get on the air or anything. Guys went to their four corners, and that was it. Transition that into guys that are in certain military units. They can get things done with a group of people, and nobody says a thing. They just, here's what happens, there's a flow about it, and that's it. Yeah. So something as simple as that to working in a house with somebody. The guys that I've been working with for years, we can search an entire house without ever saying a word, getting muzzles crossed, going into a room, posting. It's just one of those things that you get comfortable but not complacent.
Do they give you an opportunity to train a lot? I mean, I know that I've talked to a couple of buddies that work at LAPD, and it's like I know you train separately, because of your of what you're doing, but for the guys that are on day-to-day patrol, I talk to my buddies that work at LAPD, and that's usually the common theme amongst them is like, dude, there's not enough training. It's just not enough.
Yeah. Training is expensive because it all comes down to hours, and hours equal dollars. Right. We have certain things that we have to do every year per state, per county, per city. Right. Things from sexual harassment training to pursuit training to weapons qualifications, to you name it, it's out there. Yeah. We're pretty unique here at Arcadia because we do a lot of training department wide. Yeah. Every year we have a specific type of training. So this year, in the odd year, we do 2 days with firearms. Everybody, department wide. Yeah. 78 of us plus however many reserve officers we have, we'll spend 2 days on the range just shooting. Yeah. M16, handgun, backup. We'll go over scenarios. We'll do all kinds of things. Then on the even years, we do a week-long training with everybody, 40-hour training class that encompasses everything, all the hands-on stuff that we need to tell the state that we've done it, all of our CPR, all the stuff that the Red Cross and the state says we have to do. Yep. Taser training, update on that, update on baton training, hand-to-hand training, up to and including on our last day, we'll end up running everybody through a series of force-on-force live events where everybody gets sterile, we give them UTM guns, and we go into scenarios that have usually been within the last 6 months somewhere throughout the U.S. Yeah. We'll do an active shooter, we'll do domestic violence, we'll do something, we'll do a traffic stop. And the role players know that if the officer doesn't says the right thing, hey, I'm putting my gun down and I'm fine. Yeah. Or if they don't, go force on force with them. So we do a lot of training here, and I'm very glad that we do. Yeah. Could we do more? Absolutely. Everybody could. But I think here we're very fortunate, but I also understand the other side of things. Training equals dollars, because it comes down to, if I take somebody out of patrol today to send them to a training, I've got to backfill that person.
Correct.
And that equals money. Yep. And I understand agencies that have certain budgets. I mean, working for Colt, one of the things that I'd ask right out of the chute, usually in the first hour or two that I had 24 students, I'd want to know what their weapons were like. Are they department-owned weapons? Are they personally owned weapons? And if they're department-owned weapons, what are they? And you'd hear some people talk about, hey, we got Bushmaster. Hey, we got Eagle. Hey, we got Eagle Arms. Hey, we've got Colt. Now, the Colt's probably going to be one of your most expensive, and there will be some companies out there that had not as expensive guns, and I would love to see everybody have the best of everything, but I understand budgets. Right. And I understand that if I've got a chief or captain at an agency in Middle America who says, I've only got X amount of dollars, I can buy 14 of these guns, or I can buy 8 of these. Well, I've got 14 officers, so I'm going to put one of these weapons or one of these whatever widgets in their hands because that's all I can afford. I totally get it. Totally understand that. So it's training is one of those things that we can always look back, especially in big incidents, and go, why didn't we have this training? Why didn't we have that? Right. It comes down to money. I mean, let's just face it. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
If there was one thing that you wanted people to know about you, like what you're up to, what kind of person you are, what would it be?
You look on Instagram, you'll see that I got guns, hunting, food, wine. I tell everybody I'm a big dumb cop that's been very lucky over the handful of years. I've got a pretty awesome better half with Trish, and granted we split the state, and it's tough living 400 miles apart, but we've made it work over the past couple of years. I'm mellow sometimes I'm not. You could ask the guys that work for me and with me. I'm pretty even keel most of the time, but you'll know when I'm not. We all have our good side and our bad side. But for the most part, I mean, I think I'm pretty fortunate. You've heard it. I didn't do well in school. How I graduated college, I think, was sheer determination, wanting to be the first one throughout my parents' extended families who went to college. That was kind of a big thing to me.
I was the first one too, and that's a big deal.
Yeah, it was interesting to say the least, because I'd get, you went to college? Yeah, I went to college. All right. Now, I mean, college it's one of those things where I can sit home and go to college. Oh yeah,
pretty much. I mean, the access to information is insane.
Yeah, it's something else from there. But I'm a guy who likes to work. I don't like being idle. That's one of my big things. Is if I had 2 hours where I just sat and did nothing, I don't even think I could do that. I've got to be doing something.
So you're retired, man. You're gonna be keeping busy. It's not
I'm gonna have to be. Probably by that point, I might have everything in my garage up and running, and I'll be making belts and holsters and stuff like that. Even though cool. I say I should be doing that now, just to take some of the time that I have on days off. Yeah. We do work a nice schedule. It's we work what we call the 3-12. We got 3 days 1 week, 4 days the next, 3 days
it's not bad at
1 week, 4 days the next, and we take one of those days off. So most of the time I can work 3 days a week and fulfill all my needs, and then I've got either 3 or 4 days off. So I should be doing something else.
It's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah. Hence the Traeger and writing and everything else.
Right. If you could pick one person or thing, I always ask everybody that comes on the podcast 2 questions. And one of them is, if you could pick one person or one book or whatever that inspired you the most, who would it be and why? Or what would it be and why?
As far as inspiring, God, you can go back. A lot of people, they'll go back to maybe presidents, Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln. I had the opportunity to meet Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
I was the last civilian to meet him before his wife Nancy said no more people meeting the president.
Oh wow.
That was one of those things that I look back upon, and as I was 8 years old when he was elected, so I didn't know much about politics. And even when he got out of politics, I was 16, so I didn't know much about it. Right. But I've started reading a lot more about him and looking at the people that were around him. When I met him, I walked into his office, and he stood up from his desk, and he gave me that Ronald Reagan hello. And that was the hello that I did grow up when the news was on and he'd address the nation. It was that hello that he'd say to the American public when he was behind the Oval desk getting ready, or Oval Office, sitting behind his desk. That was really interesting to me. I'd love to go back in time when his mind was sound and sit on his ranch with him and have him talk about anything.
Totally.
That would be one of those things. His ranch up in Santa Barbara County is still there. I think it's still in the family. But that, if I could go back and talk with him, maybe in the 70s or 80s, maybe even before he became president, just to talk with a guy like that, I think it's really something else.
I've never written any books by him or about him. I've read it. I mean, obviously you learn about him in school and stuff like that, but seemed like an amazing president.
Yeah.
When I was born, he was the president. And obviously I wasn't old enough to really know shit about politics at that time. Right. But he sounds like one of the best presidents we've ever had, for sure. The next question is, if you had one thing that you could go back and change in your life, or that you can have steer, whether it be a kid that's coming up through the ranks or whatever, and you could go back and redo something differently, do it differently, what would that thing be and why? Like, what lesson would you want to teach somebody that you wish someone would have taught you when you were younger?
Probably would have been to spend more time with your father. Granted, I worked with him. We didn't have a great relationship. Yeah. And that's one of those things where I know with the personnel that I deal with here, I always tell them, look, family first. Yeah. I don't have kids. Trish has kids. I don't. But I always tell the people I work with, if they need anything here at the station, if something's happening at home, go deal with that. Make it better. Do everything you can. Make that family be number one. because sometimes that may be all you've got. And I wish I would have understood that message that people probably tried to tell me, but I didn't fully capitalize on that. Right. I just thought, hey, because I work with them, that's it. But that relationship soured, and once it got to a certain point, you could never really get it back. Yeah. And I wish I would have taken some cues, or even have been the better person at the time to say, hey, Dad, we need to work on this, or hey, Dad, let's go do this. Yep. I took spending time equaled quality time, but it didn't. Right. I took those two as synonymous, and it absolutely wasn't. Yeah.
It's funny, man, when I talk to other police officers, when I talk to other people that are in, the tier 1 operators and whatnot, I get that a lot, that's kind of like the theme across the board is like family comes first. Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, you get so stuck in kind of what you're doing, whether it be your career, you're with your team and you're doing your thing, but your family's at home, and that it almost becomes like that's like the back burner, I mean? They get whatever's left when you're done doing the things that you're doing.
Yeah, your family's at home worried about you.
It's a tough balance though, because I know even working when I was in corporate, you're expected to be available. You're expected to be there. You're expected to answer your phone, your emails. Even when you're on vacation, it's almost like frowned upon to be on vacation, right. And so you got to draw the line somewhere, to where it's like the company still thinks that you're doing your job and you're a great employee, but your family's still getting the best of you. And it is really a tough balance in this day and age, because now it's like instant communication. So it's like people expect a response like right away.
Hey, it's not like, you 3 minutes ago. Right. Where are you?
Exactly.
It's all right. We just got a robbery going on. I'm sitting here interviewing somebody. I can't say, hold on, let me hit my text messages.
Right. It's insane, man. But hey, Jason, honestly, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And I appreciate you, open up the range for my son and I, and I will get my wife out here.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Yeah. I'd love to bring your son back out. Obviously, you come out and bring your wife, get her comfortable. Let's have her shoot. So I know you travel a fair bit, and if that's a little better peace of mind that she can have, I'm more than happy to help out.
I appreciate that, man. The other thing too is like, thank you for what you're doing. Protecting the community and stuff like that. I think you have probably one of the biggest like thankless jobs in the country.
Public enemy number one.
Yeah, pretty much, And I think it needs to be like, some folks needs to be put on that, I mean? The cops put their, my brother's a cop, and like they go out there and they work holidays. They're working, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. It doesn't matter what that shit is. And they're out there working. And I think they've got a bad rap for so many years for whatever reasons. It doesn't really matter. But I think that at the end of the day, you guys are the first line of defense, like the people that want to talk the most shit are the ones that are gonna be calling you when shit goes south,
In saying that, I went to a dinner the other night for a friend, and I'd met a couple that was there before, and we're eating, and all of a sudden she realizes who I am, and she says, hey, I got a bone to pick with you. And my first thought was, okay, is it with me personally? Because I haven't seen you in years. Right. And it was about law enforcement, and it was why you guys, quote unquote, give tickets, and why you do this and why you do that. And I finally had it. Yeah. And I said, first and foremost, I haven't written a ticket in 3 fucking years. Yeah. Secondly, you don't have a bone to pick with me because you don't know what I do. You don't know how I do it. You don't know who I am. Yeah. You want to use this time where we're all spending with a good friend of ours to complain about law enforcement? Yeah. Not tonight. Yep. If you want to do this, I work Monday at 6 a.m. Come down to the station and bitch and complain then. Otherwise, let me finish my fucking meal.
Seriously. Well, thank you from me and my family. I genuinely appreciate you guys.
No, thank you.
And if there's anything that I could ever do to help you, you know what I mean? I'm always available. Even if it's a volunteer basis or whatever, I'd be more than happy to, man. But thank you again.
I appreciate it.
I look forward to hanging out with you more, man.
Absolutely.
All right, brother.
Cool.
Thank you for listening to My Backstory. Stay motivated and stay connected off the show. Follow at my_backstory_ to be a part of the journey to recovery and to see where your story goes. Or visit us online at hereismybackstory.com.